So you've seen the title, you clicked on the thumbnail, and you're saying, Fergus, what are you talking about when West Lothian was Welsh? Well, it wasn't just West Lothian, it was all the way from Bannockburn to the borders. And bear with me, I do have the evidence to back that up. And I've come to a specific place that holds a clue to the answers that you're looking for. This hill behind me is called Cockleroy, just south of Linlithgow, and the name is the first clue that we're looking at. Obviously it's an anglicised name, but anglicised from what? Being in Scotland you might think from the Gaelic, and there's definitely a Gaelic name that could well be in origin, Cockleroy, meaning red hood or red mantle. But there was a language that existed here long before Gaelic did, and it's there that we find a different answer. When the Romans visited Scotland, they met a people who they called the Gododdini, but in their own tongue they called themselves the Gododdin. We don't know exactly how far they stretched, but it was from roughly Stirlingshire all the way down across the border and into England. They were bordered to the north by the Picts and to the northwest by the Gaels of Dalrieta, a kingdom on the west coast that stretched from Argyll up to Skye. It was founded by people arriving from Ireland, led by the legendary King Fergus More. No relation. During the 6th and 7th centuries, this was where the early Gaelic language was focused. To the southwest was the mysterious and not very well known East Strathclyde, today referred often as the Kingdom of Strathclyde. East Strathclyde? Strathclyde? We practically still call it the same in English today. They shared a common culture with the Gododdin that stretched all the way down the west coast of mainland Britain to Wales. Sadly, the Pictish language has been lost to the mists of time, but we know a little of the language that was spoken by the Britons, the people of Strathclyde and the Gododdin. In the Brittonic language, or sometimes more specifically called Cumbric in this area, the words for red crags would translate to Cockleroy, which sounds like Cockleroy could well have come from that, perhaps via Cockleroy. The Old Welsh poem E Gododdin describes how in 600 AD, 363 of the finest warriors from all across the Gododdin lands were drawn together at the fort of Aden, Din Aden, or in Old English, Edinburgh. After a year of feasting, they set out to Catterick in the north of England to win glory in battle, and of course were nearly all killed. After a year of feasting, I think even I could have told you that that was a bad idea. Catterick was part of a kingdom called Berenicia, and in 638 they decided to exact their revenge. They marched north and captured Edinburgh Castle from the Gododdin. They forced the Gododdin out of their lands and replaced them with their own Angle population. And so then the Lothians went from being Brittonic to English. But where did they go? Now this is where the Welsh Connection kicks in. About 200 years prior, there was a man called Kennetha, who was a Gododdin warlord. He'd been left in charge by the Romans as they evacuated Scotland. He was part of an area of the Gododdin called Manor, which encompassed the area north and south of the River Forth, where it starts to widen. So Clackmannanshire, bits of Stirlingshire, and West Lothian. Now, Kennetha was under instruction from a man called Vortigern, who was essentially the one that the Romans left in charge in the absence of their governor, with his purview being the whole of Roman Britain, and incursions coming from across the Irish Sea. Vortigern asked Kennetha to come down and defend his Brittonic cousins from these raids. Gathering a force of many men, he made his way south and settled in the north of Wales, founding the Kingdom of Gwynedd, one of the cornerstones of what would then become Wales. The poor Gododdin were being squeezed from both sides by much larger and more powerful forces. The Gaels of Dalrieta absorbed first the Picts and then the people of East Strathclyde. The Angles in Northumbria were coming north, taking over the Lothians, and with nowhere else to go, the Gododdin headed south to their cousins in Wales, leaving a whole swathe of land behind them that they referred to as Hen Ogledd, the Old North. And that's how West Lothian went from being part of Wales to part of England. Hang on, I must have missed a step. Oh yeah, about 300 years after the Angles had occupied the Lothians, King Edgar the Peaceable of England demanded of Kenneth II of Scotland that he acknowledge him as his superior, and if he did so, then he would grant him the Lothians. This was a deal too good to be true for Kenneth, so he said, "Sure, you're better than me, now give me all this land." And that's how West Lothian became part of Scotland and has been ever since. The lands of Hen Ogledd are littered with hillforts, left to crumble as the old Brittonic ways were forced out by the Angles of Northumbria and then the Gaelic Kingdom of Scotland. Some saw continuous use. Dumbarton Rock was the capital of the East Strathclyde, and Edinburgh Castle for the Gododdin. The pair of forts here at Cockleroy and across on Bowden Hill where I've been standing have all but a few earthworks left from 1300 years ago. Perhaps even the legendary Kenneth knew these places before he went off to lay the foundations of modern Wales. Here on top of Cockleroy, there are fantastic 360-degree views, as far as Ben Lomond in the west to the Bass Rock in the east. That's practically the whole width of the country. The Royal Renaissance Palace at Linlithgow is sitting there down by the loch. You can see over to the Forth Bridges in the hills of Edinburgh. As well as the radio tower on Cairn Papal Hill, a Neolithic religious centre to the south. It's a wee bit tricky to see through the lens, so next time you'll just have to come with me. It's no wonder that it's a popular walking spot when you see it on a day like this. Perhaps we should offer it back to the Welsh, but you know what? I reckon it's ours by now. So I'm just going to linger in the woods of the Hen Ogledd and listen to the woodpeckers hard at work in the trees.